A very warm welcome to richplanet.net, a program dedicated to uncovering the truth about the alien and UFO mystery. I'm Richard D. Hall, and this week's program is about UFO disclosure. First of all, what is UFO disclosure? It's a commonly held belief that our governments, in particular the American government, hold secrets about extraterrestrials and unidentified flying objects. Many people believe that these secrets have been kept by successive government administrations for at least 60 years. There is massive speculation about the detail and extent of these secrets. UFO disclosure would be the uncovering or announcement to the public about some or all of these secrets. Those who follow the UFO phenomena, and in particular the politics behind the subject, increasingly believe that the human race are being prepared for disclosure. In this program, I will examine previous attempts to get our governments to disclose the secrets. I will also examine whether there has been attempts by presidents to disclose the secrets. And what about the future? When and how will governments tell the people? Probably the most significant attempt in history to get the US government to reveal its secrets took place on May the 9th, 2001. To explain this event, I need to go back in time to 1993, when Dr. Stephen Greer was a medical doctor and he started an organisation called the Disclosure Project. Between that time and 2001, Dr. Greer signed up over 450 military and intelligence personnel who were prepared to give statements about their involvement with UFOs and extraterrestrials. Dr. Greer gave up his job to pursue the Disclosure Project full time, and in 2001 they held a historic press conference in Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club. At this conference, 21 witnesses spoke at length about their experiences of ETs and ET technology. The world's media attended the event and recorded the detailed witness testimony. The day was just 4 months before 9/11, and the world was poised to have the greatest secret ever kept blown into smithereens. All of the witnesses who took part thought that this conference was going to kickstart the disclosure process and bring about changes in the world that could not be imagined. They all thought that they were going to be on the front pages of every national newspaper in the world. However, what actually happened was very disappointing. The world's media let the world down on a grand scale. And here in the UK, I cannot remember it being reported anywhere, and I've never heard anyone speak of the event. Was the world's media asleep on that day? Or did they have their mouths firmly zipped by the US government? Some people think that the event actually had the opposite effect of its intended goal, that the US government had perhaps been making subtle moves towards disclosure, but was so intimidated by the demands of the Disclosure Project, it decided to lock the UFO vault and wait for a better opportunity. Once disclosure does occur, everyone will look back on this day with total disbelief that governments were not stirred into action. In this program, I'm going to show some clips from the 2001 disclosure witnesses. Firstly, introducing Dr. Stephen Greer himself, the founder of the project.
We are here today to disclose the truth about a subject that has been ridiculed and questioned, denied for at least 50 years. The men and women who are on this stage and the some 350 additional military intelligence witnesses to the so-called UFO matter and extraterrestrial intelligence can prove and will prove that we are not alone.
I've selected a few of the witnesses that spoke on that day, starting with Michael Smith. Michael Smith was a radar operator at several different US air bases throughout the United States. In this first clip, he talks about what you do when you see a UFO. He mentions the word NORAD, which is the North American Air Defense Command, who are the central organization responsible for air defense for the whole of North America and Canada. He also uses the term a heads up which is an American term for an advanced warning. Notice how nervous Michael Smith is, because he is revealing military secrets.
My name is Michael Smith. I was in the Air Force, a sergeant from 1967 to 1973. I was aircraft control and warning operator. While I was assigned to Klamath Falls, Oregon, in early 1970, I arrived at the radar site, and they were watching a UFO on a radar that was hovering at about 80,000 feet. It sat there for about 10 minutes and then slowly descended until it dropped off the radar. It was gone for about 5-10 minutes, and then instantly reappeared at 80,000 feet, stationary. The next sweep of the radar, it was 200 miles away, stationary. It hovered there for about 10 minutes and redid the whole cycle twice more. When I found out what you normally do when you see a UFO, I was told that you notify NORAD, you don't necessarily write anything down, you don't write anything down, and you keep it to yourself. It's a need-to-know basis only. And NORAD one night called me about later in the year to let me know as a heads up that there was a UFO coming up the California coastline. I asked them what I should do about this. They said, nothing, don't write it down, it's just a heads up.
In order to explain the next clip, I've produced a simple chart. This shows the United States and the NORAD control room, which is located in the middle of the US in Colorado. I've also shown the location of Michael Smith's new job, which was at Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan Air Base. In this next clip, he described what happens when the police see a UFO.
And then late 1972, while stationed at the 753rd Radar Squadron in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, I received a couple panicky calls from police officers who were chasing 3 UFOs from Mackinac Bridge up I-75. So I immediately checked the radar, confirmed that they were there, called NORAD, and they were concerned because they had 2 inbound B-52s going to Kinslow Air Force Base. So they diverted them because they didn't want any proximity to the 2. And that night I answered many calls from the police department, sheriff's department and stuff. And my standard response was that there was nothing on radar. And I will testify to this under oath to a congressional hearing.
My standard response was, there's nothing on the radar. No wonder there are so many frustrated policemen and women out there. I've illustrated in the diagram the chain of deceit. We have at the bottom of the chain the public, who see the UFO and instantly call the police. The police head out in their patrol cars, witness the UFOs and start chasing them. They then call Michael Smith at the airbase, who calls NORAD. NORAD tells Smith to tell the police there's nothing on the radar. This is how the UFO cover-up works on a day-to-day basis. It is as simple as that. Moving on now to our next Disclosure Project witness, Carl Wolf. A few things need to be explained first before we watch the clip. In 1965, NASA sent a space probe called the Lunar Orbiter to the Moon. This unmanned vehicle was in orbit around the Moon, taking very detailed photographic images of the lunar surface as it passed overhead. One thing to point out about the Moon is, from the Earth we only ever see one side of it. This is because of the way the Moon rotates around the Earth, always presenting the same face towards the Earth. So there is an entire side of the Moon that we never actually see. The only way to see it is by getting in a spaceship and travelling to the back side of the Moon. Carl Wolf describes a trip he made in 1965 to the laboratory where the photographs were coming back from the lunar orbiter.
Good morning. My name is Carl Wolf, and I was a precision electronics photographic repairman with a top secret crypto clearance in the United States Air Force. I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. In 1965, in mid-1965, I was loaned to the Lunar Orbiter Project at NASA on Langley Field. Dr. Colley was in charge of that project. They had problems with a piece of electronic equipment that was bottlenecking their production of photographs. I went to the facility, and when I walked into the facility, there were scientists from all over the world. I was stunned, actually, to see people at a NASA project from all over the world. It didn't make any sense to me initially. I was taken into the laboratory where the equipment was malfunctioning. I couldn't repair it in the dark. I asked to have it removed. A Airman Second Class was in the dark room at that time. I was also an Airman Second Class. I was interested in how the whole process functioned, how the data got from the lunar orbiter to the laboratory. I asked the young man if he'd describe the process to me. He did. About 30 minutes into the process, he said to me, in a very distressed way, by the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon. And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers. And at that point, I was very concerned because I knew we were working in compartmentalized security. He had breached security, and I was actually frightened at that moment, and I did not question him any further. And a few moments later, someone did come into the room. I worked there for 3 more days, and I remember going home and naively thinking, I can't wait to hear about this on the evening news. And here it is, more than 30 years later, and I hope we hear about it tonight. And I will testify under oath before Congress that what I'm saying is the truth.
Now, he doesn't seem the type that would tell fibs. Moving on to the third and final Disclosure Project witness that I'm featuring. Clifford Stone worked for the US Army for 20 years in an elite top-secret team. This team was responsible for dealing with UFO crashes, specifically the retrieval of crashed UFO vehicles. He claims he was involved in the cover-up of 12 flying saucers and that he witnessed alien bodies during these events.
I was a Sergeant First Class, United States Army. I had a secret clearance with nuclear assurity. I could get the clearance that I needed to do whatever it was that was necessary for me to do at the time on special operations when I was called in on those. What I'm referring to here is that I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive. While we were doing all this, we were telling the American public there was nothing to it. We were telling the world there was nothing to it. But the whole situation is, we've set back, we've told the American people that there's no such thing as UFOs. I've been involved where we have recovered these objects. We know them to be of extraterrestrials. In 1969, I had an event that happened to me while I was stationed at Fort Lee, Virginia. We went to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. That would be my first exposure to any time that we would be recovering an unidentified flying object. When we went there, we already had people that was already in the facility. We were a backup team, which was supposed to be NBC because there was supposed to be some nuclear materials that was on board this craft. Later on, most people involved would have been were to be told that there was nothing on board it. It was nothing more than just a crash of one of our aircraft. I know better because I was one of the people that approached it with a Geiger counter to get surface readings. I was the first person to go ahead and see that there were bodies on it. That would be the first of approximately 12 events. UFO crashes are not events that take place every day. They're rare. I know we're not alone in the universe. I know that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's evidence that has been denied to the American people. I stand before you today in my almighty God, and I tell you this. If Congress calls me in and says, will you testify in detail what you know, I stand here today prepared and ready to do just that. Governments must never lie to the people for no reason. Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, the Disclosure Project press conference did not really achieve its goal. 4 months after this event, 9/11 happened, and the world's attention was sidetracked. Since 1945, there have been 11 American presidents. Firstly, I'm going to deal briefly with the presidents that did not have intentions of disclosure, i.e. the presidents that were involved with the cover-up. Then go into more detail on presidents that are known to have been in favour of disclosure. President Truman set up the CIA to centrally control all intelligence. Then he set up a secret organisation called MJ-12 with the specific intention of covering up the facts about Roswell and other incidents. So we can safely say that he was involved with the cover-up. Eisenhower was again involved with the cover-up. He allegedly met with aliens in 1954 at Edwards Air Force Base and formed the Greada Treaty. He decided not to go public with the facts and continued the cover-up which had started under Truman. Lyndon Johnson, president in the 60s, was informed of the civilization which is believed to exist on the far side of the moon. Although he is known to have had interest in the phenomena, he showed no inclination towards disclosing anything. President Nixon is alleged to have escorted Jackie Gleason to view alien bodies at Homestead Air Base in Florida. He is also known to have had a large collection of UFO books, but at no point is there any evidence of him pursuing disclosure to the public. Ronald Reagan again was involved with the cover-up, and on the odd occasion was known to slip up and say things he shouldn't have, which revealed his knowledge of the subject. George Bush Sr. was head of the CIA in 1977 when Jimmy Carter was president. Bush actually prevented Carter from gaining access to the UFO files because he knew Carter wanted to disclose the information to the public. So we can safely say that Bush was involved in the cover-up, and we can presumably conclude that George W. Bush was also involved in the cover-up. So this leaves just 4 presidents who are known to have been more favourable to the idea of disclosing the truth about UFOs. These are Kennedy, Ford, Carter and Clinton. President Kennedy is known to have been informed about the Roswell incident in 1947, and therefore certainly was party to the information way before he became president. Kennedy is quoted as saying that he wanted to tell the truth, but his hands were tied. Could it be that Kennedy had a plan to disclose the truth, which is the real reason for his assassination in 1963? Moving on to Gerald Ford. 8 years prior to becoming president, Gerald Ford was a representative of Michigan in the US Senate. In 1966, Michigan experienced hundreds of UFO sightings, and Ford wrote to the government. In the firm belief that the American people deserves a better explanation than that thus far given by the Air Force, I strongly recommend that there be a committee investigation of the UFO phenomenon. I think we owe it to the people to establish credibility regarding UFOs and to produce the greatest possible enlightenment of the subject. Lieutenant Colonel Hector Quintanilla, who was director of US Air Force Project Blue Book, when he heard Ford's comments said, "I had to shake my head and laugh. An open hearing would be a circus and I didn't want any part in it." Once Gerald Ford became president following the resignation of Richard Nixon, Ford never spoke again about UFOs until he left office, and then only on one occasion. The commitment to UFOs seemed to have gone. Why Ford changed is not certain. A letter asking Ford what he had done about the UFO problem during his various government roles was addressed to him by George Filer, a UFO researcher and former Air Force intelligence officer. In his response to the letter, Ford stated that if the UFO secrets had been given to some presidents, he was not one of them. During my public career in Congress as Vice President and President, I made various requests for information on UFOs. The official authorities always denied the UFO allegations. As a result, I have no information that may be helpful to you. Moving on to Carter. Jimmy Carter famously witnessed a UFO in 1969, and during his presidential campaign said, "If I become president, I'll make every piece of information this country has about UFO sightings available to the public and scientists. I am convinced that UFOs exist because I have seen one." Once in office, such statements about UFOs did not occur. There are a number of theories as to why Carter did not deliver on his promise. One is that he was briefed on the information and given reasons why it should not be given to the public. Another is that he and his family were threatened. Probably the most plausible explanation is that he was denied access to the information. Once in office, Carter went about achieving his goal and had a meeting with George Bush Sr., who was at the time the head of the CIA. Bush refused to give him access to the information because he knew what Carter wanted to do. So Carter hired an attorney, Daniel Sheehan, to try and get to the information. Out of all the presidents, it seems that Jimmy Carter wanted disclosure the most, and because of this was kept completely in the dark. This leaves just one other, Bill Clinton. After he had retired from power, Bill Clinton gave a speech in Hong Kong in 2005. Here is a quote in answer to a question put to him. "Well, I don't know if you've heard this, but when I was president in my second term, there was an anniversary of Roswell. People came to Roswell, New Mexico from all over the world. And there was also a site in Nevada where people were convinced that the government had buried a UFO and perhaps an alien deep underground because we wouldn't let anyone go there. And I can say now, because it's been released into the public domain, this place was really serious. That there was an alien artifact there. So I actually sent someone there to figure it out. I did attempt to find out if there were any secret government documents that revealed things. If there were, they were concealed from me too. And if there were, well, I wouldn't be the first American president that underlings have lied to or that career bureaucrats have waited out." In summary then, presidents have either been kept in the dark or have been in favour of the cover-up. So what about the future? Are there signs that we are being prepared for disclosure? The British government are releasing their classified UFO files to the public over a period of years. I don't believe for 1 minute that these files contain all of the information. However, the releasing of the files makes people aware of the issue, and the fact that it is being done gradually makes me think that this is part of a campaign to prepare the public for disclosure. I asked the government when the next release of the documents would be, but they wouldn't say. There is no exact timetable. They are being released over the coming years. Could it be that at the end of this process is a plan for disclosure? I believe that other organisations have been preparing for disclosure. Here is a recent quote from the Vatican. "Aliens could be out there, and believing that the universe may contain extraterrestrial life does not contradict faith in God. How can we rule out that life may have developed elsewhere? Just as there is a multitude of creatures on earth, there could be other beings, even intelligent ones, created by God. This does not contradict our faith, because we cannot put limits on God's creative freedom. Just as we consider earthly creatures as brother and sister, why should we not talk about an extraterrestrial brother? It would still be part of creation." So there we have it. The Catholic Church is preparing itself for disclosure.